So it's 12:01. We will go ahead and get started. So good afternoon and welcome everyone. We're so glad that you have joined us for our second session of the webinar series, Making WVABLE Work for You, presented to you by Disability Rights of West Virginia and WVABLE. So my name is Roxanne Clay, and I am with the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office and the WVABLE Savings Program, which stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience in West Virginia. Please also welcome Tiana Hardy and Roy Mallory with Disability Rights of West Virginia. They will serve as our co-hosts for today's session. And for those of you that are not familiar, WVABLE is a savings program that allows many individuals with disabilities to save and invest without jeopardizing their eligibility for federal benefit programs such as SSI or Medicaid. So today's session is titled WVABLE Easy to Enroll, Easy to Use. It is the second of 8 webinar sessions in the series that is being held every Tuesday at noon through December the 8th. If you haven't already done so, you can still register for upcoming sessions, and we've included the webpage in our chat box. But before we begin, we want to mention a few reminders. All attendee microphones have been muted to eliminate any background noise. You may include your questions in the chat box, and we will save all questions until the end of the presentation. Closed captioning and a sign language interpreter are available for all sessions. You can find and click closed captioning at the bottom of your screen. For the sign language interpreter, you can find her video tile. It's titled Sign Language Interpreter Ashley. Right-click that tile and choose Pin Video. For technical issues, please include a message in the chat box that's being monitored by our co-hosts. We have 1 hour of social work continuing ed that has been approved for this session. For those that are seeking social work continuing credit, please ensure that you have emailed wvable@wvsto.com to let us know that you are requesting social work continuing ed credit for your attendance. Include your full name and email address. And if you've already emailed, you don't have to do it again if you're attending the rest of the sessions or more sessions. We're keeping an ongoing list. At this time, though, go ahead and include your full name in the chat box. Toward the end of the session, a link to the survey will be included in the chat box, and that will also need to be completed, especially by those that are seeking social work continuing ed. And we also want to thank West Virginia University Center for Excellence in Disabilities for sponsoring the social work CEUs and making these available to our attendees. Additionally, we want to take a moment and recognize our co-host, Disability Rights of West Virginia, our planning committee, and all the scheduled presenters. WVABLE would also like to acknowledge and thank the WVABLE Advisory Board members for their ongoing support of WVABLE Savings Program. As you can see in the slide, the members are made up of numerous organizations and entities that serve and or advocate for people with disabilities. They play a huge role in informing individuals around the state about the program. And of course, WVABLE program wouldn't be possible if not for the work of State Treasurer John Perdue. He supported the many West Virginia families and advocacy groups that wanted the program in our state. He, his staff, the families and groups worked hard to bring this program to West Virginia, and our state became one of the first in the nation to pass local ABLE legislation in response to the passage of the Federal ABLE Act. So at this time, let me introduce our presenter for today's webinar session. Thomas Hatch is the operations manager for Stable Account, the nation's largest and most used ABLE program. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics and Masters of Science in Business Administration, both from San Diego State University. He began his career as a personal financial planner, but later moved to Ohio and transitioned to higher education, where he spent 17 years administering the financial programs for the Ohio State University. Thomas joined Ohio's Treasurer's Office in August of 2017 to assist the rapid expansion of the Stable Account program. Thomas and the Stable team have been busy traveling across the country, talking to families, disability organizations, service providers, other states, government agencies, and corporations about stable accounts. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Roxanne. I appreciate being on this webinar with you today, and hopefully you'll find it informative as we look at easy ways and a quick way to be able to enroll and set up an account for those of you who would like one or can use one. And also, once that account is set up, what are some ways in which you can use that account to your benefit? These are savings and investment accounts, but what we're hoping that you'll do is be able to save and invest for future expenditures or other goals that you might have. And so we also want to discuss, once that savings is built up, what are easy ways in which you can use those savings. So to start today, we thought we would break the ice by asking a few questions of our audience. You can answer these questions in the chat box, and I will give you the answers either kind of as we go through the presentation, but I'll also make sure to review them at the end. So question number 1 is, which of the following is not eligible to open an account? Is that the qualifying individual, A, B, a parent, C, legal guardian or conservator, D, best friend, or E, power of attorney? And again, we'll kind of talk about this numerous times as we go through this presentation. I see a couple answers in chat. D seems like a popular one. We had somebody think maybe legal guardian. Excellent. Okay, question number 2. When an eligible individual enrolls in an account, they must provide documented evidence of eligibility. Is that true or false? And I've bolded the T or F. You can write T or F in the chat box for that question. See a lot of trues there. Okay, we'll answer that one as well. And question number 3. What is the minimum initial deposit when opening the account? Is that A, $0, B, $25, C, $50, or D, $75? Looks like C seems to be a popular answer. We got a 25 in there. All right, and again, we'll answer these questions as we go through, but wanted to kind of start to give you an opportunity to be thinking about some of the types of questions we'll be covering today. So when we look at wanting to enroll an account, where do we start? And we're going to cover these 4 items today as we're talking about enrollment. Who can enroll? What do I need when I enroll? Key considerations while enrolling, and what happens after I enroll. So we'll start with who can enroll. This might look familiar. Actually, question number 1 that we just asked related to this. And this is also an interesting slide because I'll share with you in just a moment some updates to this. But presently, as defined by federal law, there are only 4 individuals or groups that can enroll in an account. That would be the individual with a disability, otherwise known as the beneficiary, or if that individual can't or doesn't have the capacity, then an authorized legal representative, we use the acronym ALR for that, can open the account on their behalf, and that would be a parent, a guardian or conservator, or someone holding a power of attorney. Now, I do want to mention here that just about 2 weeks ago, the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, which is the governing body at the federal level who oversees these accounts, just issued final regulations over ABLE accounts. It was a very long document, and we're still reviewing that document to understand their final rulings on a variety of issues. But I can tell you that one of the major ones that we're looking at in that final document that they put together concerns who can help somebody enroll. And it does appear at this point that they're going to be expanding this definition. Can't get into too much detail here yet because we're still trying to understand some nuances. But what you see and what we've described is applicable, and it will just expand from there. So if you fall into one of these categories as described, you're good. And then hopefully down the road, we can share more positive information with you that they're opening up for other entities or other individuals to be included in that as well. Those new regulations, by the way, or final regulations, are set to go into effect January 1 of next year of 2021. But they are also giving programs a 2-year buffer in which to comply with or include, some of those new rules in their plan. So as we go along, we'll definitely keep all of you there in West Virginia informed as to how things might be changing and in what ways. But generally speaking, most of what they've done are to loosen up the rules a little bit and to help help people to enroll and manage their accounts much more easily. Next item would be, what do I need when I enroll? So basically here, if you are the individual with the disability signing up for an account for yourself, then having contact information, which is obviously your name, addressing information, email address, phone number, things like that are going to be extremely helpful. Also your social security number and your date of birth. All of these are required pieces of information that you'll need to put into the system. If you are the authorized legal representative, or ALR, then similarly, you'll need your personal contact information, social security number, and date of birth. I will point out that for the authorized legal representative, this information is only used to basically do an ID verification check. In no other way does it impact the account. The beneficiary is the account holder. So of course, it's very important to have their social security number for tax reporting purposes and other things. But if you are wanting to help them manage the account, we do ask for your information, just simply so we can verify that you're a real person and that you are who you say that you are. The final one would be banking information. There is an opportunity during enrollment to set up banking instructions. This would be from a personal checking or savings account that you can electronically move money back and forth between these accounts. So if you want to do that during enrollment, which you can also do it after, it doesn't have to be done during, but if you would like to establish that during, then having that account number and routing number handy would be not only advisable, but it will help expedite the process much faster. So where do I go and what do I do if I want to open an account? So first you would start at West Virginia, WVABLE's website, which is wvable.com. And on that landing page of the website, there are a couple places on that page immediately visible that you can click on to open an account. One is at the very top. We kind of have a header bar of various categories. One is on the side, the left of the page header has a very big button that says open an account. Any one of these links will get you to the enrollment page. Once you click on that, you come to the enrollment page. Now, I do want to point out here, in relationship to what Roxanne mentioned last week in her presentation, for those of you that were there, that we don't want you to be confused by the fact that this enrollment page has a stable account logo and name. Some people can be confused and ask, well, I was just on WVABLE's website and I come to this one and it has a different logo and a different name. The reason for that is because we here in Ohio, stable account is our branded name, just like WVABLE is for West Virginia, of our program. And West Virginia, along with 10 other states, have partnered with us to utilize this program together at significant cost savings to the state. And so because of that, it's just branded as our account, but any individual nationally actually, but also within any one of these 11 partner states utilizes the same system. So you click on the Enroll Now option on the screen, and that's going to take you to a screen that I'm not going to show you here, but the very first screen you would come to just goes over eligibility requirements, you know, some of the information we already shared about things to have on hand that would help in the enrollment process, just a variety of information to share with you prior to then actually entering into the enrollment system. Once you click next or go past that opening screen, the first place that you're going to come to is to be able to set up your username. Very similar to a lot of other systems. You would enter your email address twice. You'll need to enter that and then confirm it. The important thing here is that the email address that you would enter at this point is going to be the primary one you want all correspondence from the account to go to. So, you know, if you're a parent, as an example, maybe managing an account for a child, you would want to put in your personal email address or whatever address that you would want to have all of the correspondent information come to make sure you're not missing any messages from our program manager. Next, you would fill in your username. That username needs to contain only letters and numbers, needs to be 6 to 25 characters long, and is not case sensitive. So whether you use uppercase or lowercase, it doesn't matter, because when you put it in, the case of the letters does not affect whether it's going to be acceptable or not. Also, the one thing I wanted to point out here is that you'll see on various occasions throughout our screen, and I'll highlight it here on our presentation, there's going to be little asterisks. Anytime you see an asterisk next to a category name, that is a required field. It must actually have something in it to be able to progress to the next screen. So here we have some terms and conditions for the website agreement that you would have to click on the box or check the box in order to be able to then move to the next screen. If you want to see what those terms and conditions and agreements are, you can click on that. I think it's about a 4-page document, not too horrendous of reading. And read that. If you're comfortable with it, go ahead and move to the next screen. After you entered your username, of course, we're going to want to enter a password. Our system conforms to the complex password requirements, which is that your password must be at least 8 to 15 characters and include at least 3 of the following, which is an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a number, or a special character. If you use all 4, that's great. Makes your password even more complex and secure, but you're only required to do 3 of the 4. This is becoming more common in the industry nowadays, so hopefully this won't be anything new or different from what you might be used to in other types of systems. And of course, we'll do that twice in retyping the password just to make sure that we've confirmed the one that we want to use. After your password is set, we come to security questions. Again, very common in our industry nowadays. This is primarily used in case you ever want to do a personal reset of your password so that you don't have to call a customer service number. If you forget, you can click on the links. It will ask you your security questions and allow you to be able to reset your password. I've just populated in here a couple more common ones. Obviously, there's a drop-down menu that will have more options than this. You can select from the option which one you want. You know, what is your mother's name is a very common one. What is your favorite sports team? You know, maybe a very common one. But you'll need to fill in 2 security answers into the system so that they can have it on file for you to use. After the security questions, you've basically gotten past the initial, I've established my login credentials part. Now we're getting into the enrollment part of the account. The very first question you're going to be asked and this will determine what screens you see as we go along, is are you the beneficiary opening the account for yourself, or are you the authorized legal representative opening the account for somebody else? What I'm going to do on this presentation today is show you as if you marked that I am the authorized legal representative opening it for somebody else. So if you do that, then the very next screen that you'll see is one that asks for the authorized legal representative's information. So if it was somebody signing up for themselves, they would not see this screen because they wouldn't need it. It would just go straight to the beneficiary screen asking them to fill in their personal information. Again, I just point out here that any of the categories with an asterisk are required. So in order to complete the screen and go to the next, each of those will have to have something in the field. Obviously, the social security number and the birth date are going to be key and important fields. And then you have your addressing information, telephone number. You'll also notice at the very bottom, there is a box that you can check if you wanted to enter in an alternate mailing address that might be different from your permanent address. That is an option available to you. And the other final reminder that I'll just mention to you is there is a ruling around the date of birth that if that date is put in such that it's less than 18 years old, it will automatically reject. So that's kind of a fail-safe so that individuals less than 18 years old can't open an account for themselves. But I thought I would just point that out in case you get a red screen saying not acceptable and you're trying to figure out why. That's part of the rules that you need to be at least over the age of 18 to be able to establish an account. The very next screen after this that you'll go to looks almost identical. So I'm not going to show it to you here on this presentation. It's going to be the beneficiary information, but all the information here that you see for the authorized legal representative is going to be on the beneficiary screen. Their name, social, birth date, address, and so forth. The only difference, which I'll mention, is that at the very bottom of the screen on the beneficiary page, there will be one additional drop-down that will ask you for state of residency. So in that case, you'll want to appropriately mark what state you are a resident of. That is important because in our relationship as a total plan, Ohio and West Virginia and the other states, for those that are part of this group of states, they get lower investment management fees by being a part of the team. So we want to make sure that we mark that state residency appropriately. And that can always be changed if you end up moving out of state, but also understand that because our platform is a national platform, no matter where you live, you can still own the same account. So if you move out of state, doesn't mean you have to get a plan in the state that you're moving to. You can keep the same account because it is accepted nationally. So after you finish the beneficiary information, the next question you will be asked is what delivery options that you want. So this is your plan documents and your tax forms. There's only two options. Either you receive them all on an e-delivery, or basically they're online electronically in your account, or do you want them sent to you through the mail? If you choose the mail option, they will actually be available in both circumstances. You will be have them available online along with receiving a copy in the mail. But do understand that if you choose the option to have them mailed to you, there is a $10 annual print and mail charge that our program manager has to cover the cost of mailing those out to you. So our suggestion is, do the e-delivery route. It is an online program. All of the documentation, the plan documents, forms, quarterly statements will all be available online. But if you'd like them mailed, that's your choice. Just understand there will be a $10 annual charge. So once you've clicked on the accepting of the terms and conditions of the delivery options, we go to our next screen. Now this is a pretty busy one with the way that I've set it up for those seeing the presentation. So there are 4 main questions on eligibility that will need to be answered on this next screen. Question number 1 is, what is your authority to sign up for this account? So you would select, I'm the parent, I'm the legal guardian, I have a power of attorney, or I'm the beneficiary myself, I'm the eligible individual. So again, thinking back to that first question we asked as we started the presentation today, these are the ones currently defined as authorized to open the account, with the possibility going forward of having some expansion to that. Next one is, what is the basis of eligibility? If you were on the presentation last week with Roxanne, she went over these eligibility requirements. I won't talk a lot about them there, but you have a drop down to select which one. Things like I'm entitled to or receiving supplemental security income, or SSI. I'm entitled to or receiving SSDI, or Social Security Disability Insurance. I have a condition that's on the SSA Compassionate Allowance list, or I'm self-certifying a disability that has been diagnosed by a licensed physician. I will tell you on these options, again, this is a screen that I'm not going to show you in the presentation today, but if you select the option that you're self-certifying with a doctor's diagnosis, there will be an additional pop-up screen after this one that will ask you for information around that diagnosis, like what was the date, who was the doctor, stuff like that. I'm not going to show you that screen, but if you choose that, just understand there will be some information around that certifying occurrence that you'll need to input into the system as well. Finally, out of these three main selections here, you'll need to put in, or you're asked to put in, what the disability type is. These are just very generic sort of industry codes. You know, we would ask you to select one. It is a required field. Frankly, this just helps us as a program to help us understand, you know, what types of disabilities individuals with these accounts have in general categories, so that we can, you know, better understand how to do outreach and how to support all of those various groups. The other final one that I'll put that sometimes kind of sneaks by people, because it's sort of down here at the bottom, and that is this section down here where you're going to check if the beneficiary's disability is considered permanent. And there's a little checkbox here. If you do check the box saying yes, then it will ask you, it'll bring up a typable box that will ask you to describe more. That box is relatively irrelevant. I mean, if you just want to write something like, you know, born with a disability, or, you know, something like that, it's fine. We're not going to scrutinize it heavily. But the important thing about whether you check the box or not is this. If the disability is considered permanent, then each year you will not be asked to recertify the disability. If the disability is not considered permanent, then there is an annual recertification process. So every January 1st, or, you know, right around there, you'll get a message from a program manager saying, can you log into your account and recertify that this account holder, this beneficiary, still has this disability. So if you want to avoid that recertification process every year, because, you know, the beneficiary does indeed have a permanent disability, then you can go ahead and check this box, and that will forego having to do that every year. Yes, next after that, after you've finished the eligibility requirements, then we can go to the investment options. This, to be honest with you, is one of the, it's not a tricky screen from the standpoint that it's difficult, but over the program's history, we've noticed that this becomes a more difficult screen for a lot of participants, because they may be less familiar with it and they might not know what to do here. So did want to explain a couple different options about the investment options. So there's some text up there that will talk to you about how your total needs to equal 100%, some other things to think about. But the important part here is, at this stage, you have two options. So you can either, you know, choose your investment options now, or you can choose our default investment option, which will put you 100% into the bank safe, and then you can, you know, deal with other possible investment options later. So let me describe a couple key important things. Item number one, wanted to let everybody know that myself, the West Virginia's Treasurer's Office, anybody on our customer service team, none of us by law can legally give you investment advice. So if you want to come to us and ask us to advise you on what to choose, unfortunately, we can't. That is part of the law. If you happen to be associated with or know a financial planner or registered investment advisor, or a trusted friend or somebody that you want to ask, that would be okay. But unfortunately, nobody involved with this program can give you such advice. But one of the things that we did with this default investment option, choice number 2, which I'm kind of showing here, is maybe help take some of the guesswork out of it. So the bank safe, as described last week on the presentation, is our FDIC insured savings account. So it's an account in which you're not going to earn as much interest, but it's not going to lose any money either, right? So it's a very safe, very stable account. So what a lot of people do, just as a suggestion, is they might start with a bank safe. When they get the account finalized and funded, then they have the opportunity, once they feel comfortable with everything, to look at changing that down the road. And current federal rules are that you have 2 opportunities in a calendar year to move your money to different investment options. So maybe you start out in the bank safe, you start adding a little bit more money once it gets up to a significant balance, or you feel more comfortable with understanding what these investment options are, you can always go back into the system and move that money around to different options. Or you could just choose your options now. Just know that if you choose the options and fill in percentages in these boxes, that they just need to equal 100% here at the bottom in order for you to continue to the next screen. So once you see 100% with like the green outline box, then you're good to go, and it will allow you to move to the next screen. So after your investment options, we go to our contribution options. So within contribution options, there's primarily 2 main options here. You can either contribute electronically, and that is, we call it ACH, that's just a term for electronic transfer, or you can do it by check. And the minimum initial, hint, hint, question that we had at the beginning of the presentation here is $50. We do like to emphasize that $50 is not a fee. That's just to create a balance in the account. That is all your money, but it just creates a balance in the account and gets things started. If you choose to do it by check, at the end of the enrollment, when you get your success screen, it will have instructions on that screen as to where to send the check. And as long as it's for $50 or more, then that will go in, fund the account, and you're good to go. If you want to do it electronically, we just need to make sure to get through the process of getting that account set up and verify the bank account, either checking or savings, and then you can process a transfer that can go back, back and forth. But in this case, from your account into the stable account here. You also have the option on the screen to set up recurring contributions if you would like to, for sort of an automatic, savings. That's going to be, of course, if you set up a bank account and maybe you say, just to have a regular routine, I want to transfer a certain amount of money from that account into my stable account every month on a certain date. That is an option you can set up. And then also rollover contribution. So here's another interesting one. By law, each individual in an ABLE plan can only ever have 1 account. So if you happen to have opened an account with another plan and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I live in West Virginia now, or I mistakenly opened it into a different plan, but I really want to be in West Virginia's plan for some of the great benefits, like the tax deduction and the fact that there's no, with exceptions that was covered last week, but some of the Medicaid recovery laws are different for West Virginia residents in their plan. So you can roll over or transfer from that other plan into the West Virginia plan or into a stable account. And you can use that as the option to fund the account. So you need to open the account first, and then once the paperwork is done and the money's moved from the other account into this new account, then that can be used as your funding vehicle. Also, you can roll over amounts from college 529 savings accounts. That was another law that came in a few years ago. You could also potentially use that as your funding source as well. Just understand that with the college savings, that is subject to the annual contribution limits, a maximum currently of $15,000 per year. So, you know, if you have a pretty large college saving account that you want to bring into the plan, unfortunately, you may not be able to do it all at one time. You may need to spread that over some years because there is a limit on how much you can transfer in per year. But these are all ways in which you can fund the account. As mentioned last week on the presentation from Roxanne, one of the preferable ways is by check, and she can even provide you some resources there, some envelopes that have already been pre-addressed and some other things if you get a hold of her to help facilitate that. And once you've selected your contribution options, then from there it's finishing out the rest of the enrollment. I'm not going to show you some of the rest of the screens. Most of them are just confirming the information that you have. The very final screen before you're finished is a certification screen. So I'll use this one to describe one of the answers to one of the questions at the very beginning. So what we do with our program is we do everything on a self-certification or self-attestation basis. And the very final screen you'll come to will have a variety of questions that you'll then certify, you know, under penalty of perjury and those legal terms, that you know the information that you've entered is correct and true, that you are indeed authorized for the account and so forth. And then you select that, and that is for us good enough to enroll and open and use the account. So we do not require actual documentation from our account owners as far as what their disability is. No documentation, like if you're an authorized legal representative with a power of attorney, we don't require you to send us a copy of that power of attorney. If you're a guardian or a conservator, we don't require you to send in any paperwork proving that you are in that position. But what we do ask you to do is to keep all of that documentation on hand for yourself in case it's ever asked for. Again, the IRS currently is the governing body at the federal level. They could come back at some future time and you know, we all hate the word audit, but audit or ask for further information. And that could be possibly something that they ask for, is for you to show evidence that, you know, that you qualify for the account or that you have the capacity to be managing the account because you have a power of attorney or whatever other circumstance. So we don't require it. Keep it on hand and have it there as evidence in case it's ever asked for. Next, after you finish that enrollment, you get that success screen and we're all cheering and for you and happy. What are some of the next steps? What do we do after that enrollment is finalized? And I want to go over 3 things that I think are very critical because these can trip up people once the account is opened from potentially getting the account finalized and usable. So number 1 is funding the account, as we mentioned. So if you selected to send in a check, then, you know, make sure that you send the check in, you know, that you print out the page that shows the mailing instructions, you put the check in, send it in to our program manager. They're actually in Jacksonville, Florida, gets processed, you're all good to go. If you set up the electronic banking instructions, which goes into the second point that I'm going to mention here, then you want to make sure that that gets finished. And one of the things that often trips up people there is that we currently use a micro deposit process in order to verify the bank account. So what that means is that once you've given our program manager the routing number and account number for your bank, within a couple business days, they will make 2 very small, that's the word micro, very small deposits. These are going to be pennies, you know, 2 cents, 5 cents, something very small. And there will be 2 of them. You will then need to go into your bank, get those numbers, go back into your stable account, and at the appropriate screen, put those numbers in. Once that happens, then that verifies that the system knows that this account is yours and good, and that it's not a stolen account or some other kind of thing like that. And it will finish the verification your account will be good to go, and then you can move the money. One of the big problems we see sometimes is people will put in their banking information, the micro deposits go out, and then they forget to check, or they don't know that the micro deposits are there. And if it goes longer than 15 days, then those micro deposits no longer become, they're no longer usable. They go kind of what we call stale, meaning that you'd have to reinitiate the whole process again and have new micro deposits deposited if you haven't finished and completed the process within 15 days. So that's an important one to do if you go that route. Make sure to get those micro deposit amounts, come back in the account, put them into the system so that you can verify the bank account, and then you'll be good to go. The other one that can trip people up at times is identity verification. So as you might suppose, this is a program in which we want to make sure that individuals that are signing up are doing it appropriately and they are who they say they are. So we do have an identity verification process. Believe it or not, this is actually going on in the background as the enrollment is taking place, and it will go out and search public records and look for things such as matching up your name with your social security number, your name with address information and so forth. We do realize that because of the nature of individuals with disabilities, there may be, especially the beneficiaries, may not have a lot of public information available. They may not have lived out on their own, thus not having, utility bills or rental costs, or they might live in a group home or some other setting in which a lot of that is covered through the living arrangement, and so they don't have a lot of things to their name. So because of that, it's not uncommon at times that more information to help identify them is asked for. If so, that will come in an email with an attached form that will outline various types of and pieces of information that they would like for you to respond to in order for us to make sure that this individual is good to go. All of that can be uploaded in a secure, safe manner from your account. So if they're asking for copy of the social security card or something that shows an address on it, you don't have to send those through the mail or anything. You can just go into the account, upload those to their secure server. They look at them, you're good to go, and so forth. But again, that's another one where if you don't respond, then eventually after 90 days, we're going to close the account. I use the word close. We sometimes in the background amongst ourselves, we call it the account going dormant, but our program is being charged by our program administrator for that. And if we can't collect a fee on the account, then it's costing us. And so after 90 days, if that account is not funded or completed, then we just make it dormant or close it for the time being. If your account is ever closed, it's not closed for good. All you would ever need to do is using your user ID and password, log back in, answer a couple certification questions, and it is reactivated. Then all you have to do is either finish the identity verification or fund the account, and you're good to go. So we encourage people, don't get too discouraged. If you have any questions about that or are having difficulty getting through some of those, we have a very good, competent customer service group, an 800 number that you can call. I know Roxanne there in the treasurer's office is more than happy to help at times. Sometimes I even field personal calls if necessary to get involved. I have direct link to the manager of our customer service team at our program manager. So if I need to get involved, I can to help work through these situations. We don't want this to be a difficult, painful process. Sometimes, unfortunately, it can be if things don't always go as smooth. But we're here to help in any way we can to make sure that you get enrolled, you get the account up and running, and it becomes usable for you. Next, we'll turn our attention to how do you use the account? What are some of the spending methods that you can use with it? There are primarily three spending methods. I'm going to talk to you about them with an emphasis on the stable card, but I will talk to you about them in order of my recommendation of how good I think they are related to documentation. So first of all, do understand that any of these methods are free as far as a withdrawal. There's no cost to withdrawal. There's no limit on how many times you can make a withdrawal. So the first one is a transfer between a checking and savings account. So if you have set that up on the front end of the account to be able to move money between a checking and savings to the stable account, then you could move money back into that account. Now, to me, this is can be a convenient one, but from a documentation standpoint, is probably the least favorable, because of the fact that if this account that you're moving the money to already has personal money in it, then you're going to have to kind of keep extra strict records on which, what amount of money in the account is personal, what amount is related to the stable account. And then when you spend, you're gonna have to keep track of all of those receipts and other documents to make sure that was the expenditure qualified and how much did I spend. Do know that when money is sent back to a checking or savings account from the stable account, it is still deemed as protected. So that money will still not, or should not, be counted as a resource, but you would need to have it looked at as being segregated, understand how much of it is there, and in some cases, having a plan for how you're going to spend that money, because there is some special rules around money that's going to be spent on housing or rent or so forth. So a convenient way of moving money to be able to spend it, but from a record keeping standpoint, probably the least desirable. Second is a third-party check. These were covered last week again in the presentation, but third-party check is, we call it like bill pay. So you can have our system write a check and send it to whoever you want to anywhere in the United States via the U.S. Postal Service. So you can, we see this used a lot for individuals that need to pay rent. So they'll go in and they'll write out the information to be able to have a check cut from their account and sent directly to the landlord. There is a memo section where you can put in information that will be on the check as well to further identify it. And then of course our system on the back end keeps track of, how much the check was, when it was sent, who it was sent to. So some amount of documentation there, definitely much better than having to do it all yourself with a checking or savings account. The final one I wanted to highlight, and we'll highlight even more on our conversation today, is the stable card. So this is a stable Visa prepaid card. And that particular card, here's an image of it, along with a young man. And I apologize, I should have done this beforehand. I know I was going to talk to Roxanne about this, what his name is, but he is a West Virginia WVABLE account holder who, pictured here, is coming out of the store after using his stable Visa prepaid card to purchase some things on his own. So great story. You can see the smile on his face. One of the things that we do find, especially if you get a card for those individuals, they may not have ever had one before. And it's kind of like a really neat thing for them to have this card with their name on it that they can go and use to buy things that they want. So, but here's a couple of things I really wanted to emphasize to you. Number one, the stable card needs to be ordered separately. So it does not automatically send to you once you finish enrollment of the base account. Currently, the vendor for the card is different than our manager of the account, so it has to be enrolled in separately. An easy way to do that is if you go to WVABLE.com and go to the link at the top for resources, then at the bottom of that resources page, you'll find a section called Stable Card Information. And that information has two links, one to where you go to request the card, and the second is where you go to log in if you already have the card and the account is up and running. When you click on the request a card, it comes to a page which allows you to enroll in the card, and you have the opportunity to primarily either enroll as the authorized legal representative and get a card that way, or if you are the individual with a disability, you can apply for your own card. I will say under the authorized legal representative version, that primary card will come to the authorized legal representative, typically in their name, with a secondary line for the benefit of whatever the name of the beneficiary is of the account. So let's take another example of, again, a parent and child. So it would come to the parent, and then it would have the child's name also on the card so that we know who the beneficiary of that account is. But you also have the ability to set up a secondary card, sometimes we call it the companion card, for that beneficiary. And one great tool that's here that we've received lots of feedback on is kind of like a helpful financial tool to help teach that child or that individual responsibility, right? So you can get them their own card. You have your own card that are both attached to the same account, but those cards can be loaded separately. So again, these are prepaid, so funds have to be loaded onto the card before they can be used, but each card can be loaded separately, and funds can be transferred between cards in real time. So one of the things that I've often mentioned to individuals that is a great tool to use is if the parent wants to, in the example I'm using, they could fund money onto the card that they have as the authorized legal representative, and then as needed can transfer money from that card over to the child's card whenever that child needs money. Let's say they have an allowance, or you want to give them a certain budget, then you can just move money from your card onto theirs in whatever dollar amounts that you want, as long as of course you have that much on the card. And that's a great way to manage the card and give them only access to as much as you want, but then also keep some on the card in case you yourself need to go out and do anything in their behalf. In addition, once you've gotten those cards, I wanted to point out a couple things that I think are really cool on the website that you go into, and why I think from a tracking standpoint, this is such a powerful tool. So here is what the account looks like when you log into it to be able to see information. You start on a transaction screen, and we have one transaction here that is showing that I'm using as an example. And the great thing about the transactions is similar to any other kind of credit or debit card, they're real time. As soon as the money is spent at the location, probably within 60 seconds, the transaction shows up in the account and you can already see it. Secondly, you can click on the transaction to open up further details. And so you'll see down here kind of this further detailed section. And number one, right here, you can attach receipts. I think this is so great. One example would be with a cell phone, logging into this site, which is mobile friendly, taking a picture of the receipt and then immediately attaching it to the transaction that just happened. That probably takes care of most of the documentation that you would probably ever need to have. But number two, you can also add notes. On this one, I just made a very simple one and just said food, but it's also date, time, stamped, and who made the note. You can always go in and edit the notes later. But if it happens to be a mixed receipt, maybe you put, spent, this much on this item or that item, and so forth. And then finally, you can mark right here whether you feel this is a qualified disability expense or not. And it's just a dialog button, a quick yes or no. And the other great thing about these is that once all this information is filled in, I don't have the time to show you right now, but we have this report section as another tab within the account. And the most detailed report that you can run on the section will run you a report in which all of these pieces will be included in the report. So it will not only show you the vendor and the amount and the date and time and how much was spent, but your receipts will be on the report, any notes, your designation of qualified disability expense, all of those will be on the report. And it's just, how great would that be to be going into, an annual review and be able to just print out this report and say, here's how we've been using this card, or this is the documentation around how we've been spending and so forth, if that should ever be asked. Also some really great things. I was telling Roxanne we should probably do a separate seminar just on this one only, but spending monitors is another great option that you have. You can set up alerts to know when the balance on the card is getting low, when things are being spent. You can either receive text or email messages. Just some really great tools. So if you have a card, I'd recommend you going out to this site and just really looking through a lot of the great features that you have there. After that, that's pretty much the bulk of what I wanted to talk about here. We will go over our pre-seminar answers, and then we have 3 additional questions, and then we'll open it up for some questions and answers here for the last few minutes. So Going back through the pre-seminar questions we asked, which of the following is not eligible to open an account? That was answer D, which is your best friend. Now, possibly down the road, could that be open? Who knows? It's a possibility. Or, you know, I will also specify too, of course, if the best friend has a power of attorney or is the guardian, you know, they would fill those categories. But just being designated best friend does not qualify you to open the account. When an eligible individual, this is kind of a trick question, when an eligible individual enrolls in an account, they must provide documented evidence of eligibility, and that is false, meaning that for us as a program, you need to send in or show any kind of you know, documentation to us. Keep it on hand for yourself, but as far as our program's concerned, you don't have to give us any of those documents. And then the final one, what is the minimum initial deposit when opening an account? And that was C, $50. So here's our final few questions as we get close on time and look at wrapping this up. Go ahead and answer these in the chat. We'll go through these relatively quick, but you should have seen the answers to these as we've gone through. So hopefully those of you that were paying really close attention will easily know these answers. Question 1. You automatically receive a stable card after you enroll. Is that true or false? All right, we see Cheryl already mentioned false. So did Russ and Tammy and a few others. So yes, indeed that is false. You need to separately enroll in the card. It will not automatically come to you. Excellent. Question number 2. What is the annual charge if you elect to receive mailed statements or tax documents? Was that A, $0, B, $10, C, $20, or D, $30? So if you elect to have them mailed, what is the annual fee that will be charged to your account? Seeing a lot of B, $10, and so that is correct. So the answer is B, that is $10. But you can avoid that if you just sign up for electronic versions of the statements. Final question before we go to question and answers. Which of the following is not a spending method from the account? Is that transfer to checking or savings, the stable card, a third-party check, or a cash withdrawal? This one should be relatively easy. And I'm seeing a lot of the answers there, a lot of D's. I did see one C. Third-party check is an eligible way. It's cash withdrawal. And I will also tell you too, in concerning cash withdrawal, the stable card does not allow for cash withdrawal. So you can't use it like an ATM or anything like that to get cash out. Again, another way in which you pull out cash, how are you going to reasonably be able to track and monitor your spending and stuff with that? So, and with that, we'll go to whatever time we have left. Would love to field as many questions as possible. We'll turn it back over to Roxanne.
Okay, Tom, that was great information, a lot of information. We do have about a minute for questions, but for anyone that's able to stay on a couple extra minutes, we welcome you to do that because we would like to get to the couple questions that we have and also mention a few additional items. So we did have a question from Bill, and he has asked, if you have 100% in bank safe, how much do you have to offset the yearly fees given the current interest rates?
Well, I think it was Bill, right? That is an excellent question. So there's a number of dynamics there. Right now, BankSafe is averaging about between 1 and 1.25% return a year. So again, not a lot. Your current cost just from an account fee every month is $3.50. So, you know, even if you had the initial deposit of $50 in your account, you know, for a whole entire year, you're at least going to be covered on your monthly fees there. Now, of course, the question is, I think what you're alluding to is how much would you have so that if you're getting the 1% on a BankSafe, that just the interest off the account could cover that annual fee. That I'd have to go back, frankly, and calculate to see where that might turn out. As you can imagine, it might have to be a reasonably substantial balance, but definitely I can calculate that after the call and get that back to Roxanne, and we can send that to you. So if she has a way to contact you, we can definitely get you an exact number there. Also understand too that we're constantly working and hope to be able to share some good news with everybody here shortly about working to reduce that monthly maintenance fee as well. So we're looking to always try to bring that down so that it's even costing everybody less to use.
Okay. The next question, James Qualls. As it relates to WVABLE and Stable in other states that have similar programs, can the individual be penalized for a deposit, getting the money, etc.? I think what he might be asking is if there's fees for making withdrawals, and if there's any other fees involved or penalties.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So each program in each state has the ability to set whatever those parameters are for their state. I do know some states, for example, that do charge fees for, like, let's say, rolling your account from one state to another. I know a number of states that have debit cards or loadable cards like ours that charge a monthly fee to have the card. We do not. You know, I think that $10 print and mail fee is pretty common among programs, but you just have to look into the program's specific plan disclosure document to see what all the fees that they charge. But it does definitely vary. Frankly, there are a couple states that don't even charge an account maintenance fee. I mean, to be honest, they have enough where their state is able to cover the cost for all that, but that's pretty rare.
Okay, next question. If an individual is currently on SSI and SSDI, which one do you select as the disability?
You know, either one is fine. It doesn't really play into anything that has to do with the account. It just lets us know that you're eligible and helps us in kind of tracking the sources of eligibility for most people. So I'd say just select whichever one you would like.
So probably,
the important thing is just for us to know that indeed you're eligible for the account.
So Tom, if I recall correctly, that very first response option is if you're entitled to receive SSI or SSDI due to the disability or blindness. Sounds like maybe that would be a response that she could select.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but the SSDI one could be fine as well.
Okay.
Under both circumstances, they're eligible. So that's the important part.
Okay, gotcha. This is my first session of the series. After discussion, I feel I missed some important information from the first session. Will the PowerPoint slides be shared? So reach out to me via email. We will be sharing the recorded video once that is available. And then I can also share the PowerPoint. So just be sure that you send me an email to request that. And then, like I mentioned, the video will be available at some point in the near future. And then Bill is saying, I'm thinking that if I open an account for my son and put his Christmas/birthday money there, the yearly fees might eat up his small gifts. How much money do we need to start with in order to overcome the yearly fees, given whatever interest it currently pays? I guess this is in the thousands, but really don't know. I look forward to the email, this calculation. Okay, so this is Bill following up on his initial question.
Yeah, for sure, and it's totally understandable. You know, we wish we could make these accounts free. Basically, the monthly charge in the account is a pass-through. It's what our program manager charges us to be able to manage those accounts and do all of the accounting and back-end work that they do. Again, we are looking at reducing that here hopefully soon, and continue to try to drive that cost down as much as possible. But yeah, we'll definitely, Bill, we'll get that calculation done for you and sent out.
Okay, so I think that is all the questions that were presented in the Q&A and in the chat box. I wanted to mention real quick too that the slide that Tom shared of the young man that was walking out of the Dollar General store holding a bag, that was a testimonial that was provided by the mother, Catherine Vigil from the Eastern Panhandle, and the individual's name is Jackson Brubaker, and he is also a member of the People First of the Eastern Panhandle. So it's just great to see those testimonials. We always welcome those, and it just goes to show how a stable card can do many things, including the ease of making frequent withdrawals, but then also be used to help increase the independence for individuals that are learning to manage monies and to gain financial independence. And so, Tom, this was a great presentation today. You talked about the different options for making contributions. I loved how you gave information about making reoccurring contributions. That was a great tip. And then you provided some additional steps on ensuring that if the individual that enrolls experiences some hiccups along the way after enrollment, you kind of took a deeper dive into those extra steps to make sure that the process is completed so that individuals can start using their accounts. And of course, we love the stable card. That is something that we know is kind of underutilized. I think about average 35% of WVABLE enrollees actually have a stable card. So again, for folks that are wanting to make more frequent transactions, if they have a teenage child that they're wanting to teach money management skills, you know, the table or the stable card is an excellent tool. I love how you showed us the screenshots within the stable account as well that gave us a view for what you see when you're in the account, but then also the extra tips on how to keep record and upload documents, receipts, things like that. So this was great, and thank you so much. And anyone that would like another presentation just on the stable card, send me an email. And you know, that's something that Tom and I have talked about, and we're considering that for sometime in the near future. So stay in touch with us. And I do have a few last minute reminders, especially those that are requesting social work continuing ed. And be sure that you have included your name again in the chat box. This is for the social work board and their record keeping purposes. Roy has provided the survey link, so be sure in the chat box, be sure that you have clicked on that link and that you do complete that survey at this time. And if you have any further questions that you weren't able to ask today, you can send an email to wvable@wvsto.com. After each session, each individual that has attended will receive a WVABLE information packet. So if you're attending all of the series, the sessions, you're only going to receive one mailing, but please allow a couple weeks to get that package. It's going to include some WVABLE brochures, and then that in some promotional items that includes the contact information for not just WVABLE, but stable account. That way, once you've enrolled in the account and you need some customer service support, you have the 1-800 number right at your fingertips. For example, here's a pen that we provide in the mailing. Also, in the packet is some information for Disability Rights of West Virginia as well, as they are the co-sponsors for this series. So we do hope to see you next Tuesday at noon for our third session in the series, WVABLE, your tool for savings and staying on a budget. That will be presented by Josh Juckett of BB&T, now Truist. Living with a disability is expensive, and financial planning is important to maintaining and achieving financial independence. This session will educate participants on how to create a financial plan based on their financial goals to pay for current and future expenses such as medical, education, transportation, housing, and other living expenses. Participants will learn how to incorporate WVABLE as a saving and budgeting tool in reaching their financial goals and increasing financial independence. So again, Tom, thanks for all the information that you've shared today. We hope that whether you're an individual that advocates for individuals with disability, if you are working with them directly, or if you are a parent, a family member, or if you are the individual with a disability, that the information provided today will certainly help to shed some additional light on the enrollment process and the stable card, and that you can share that with others as well. So it's been a pleasure to have you all with us today, and thanks for joining us. Stay safe and have a great rest of your day.